Good morning. It is Friday, April 24th, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 24 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East remains in a state of extreme kinetic intensity following the official expiration of the 14-day ceasefire. Overnight, reports from the Persian Gulf indicate that the maritime environment has become increasingly hostile. While the United States has maintained its naval blockade of major Iranian ports, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has reportedly increased its deployment of sea mines and fast attack craft near the Strait of Hormuz. In a significant diplomatic development, mediators in Pakistan have confirmed that a second round of high-stakes talks has reached a stalemate, as both Washington and Tehran refuse to yield on the preconditions for a permanent truce. The humanitarian toll in the Levant continues to rise, with international aid agencies reporting that the number of displaced persons has surpassed 1.5 million, as the lack of a formal maritime agreement hampers the delivery of critical food and medical supplies to regional hubs.
Transitioning from the front lines of conflict to the broader global economy, the narrative is being dictated by the structural reality of a prolonged energy choke point and its ripple effects through industrial sectors. The International Monetary Fund, following its recent growth downgrade to 3.1%, has released a supplementary analysis warning of a persistent stagflationary trap for manufacturing-heavy economies. In Europe and East Asia, the combination of high energy costs and redirected supply chains is leading to a significant contraction in industrial output. For the first time since the 1970s, the global economy is facing a scenario where energy volatility is not merely a temporary shock but a semi-permanent tax on productivity. Economists are particularly concerned about the erosion of policy buffers in emerging markets, as the rising cost of servicing public debt complicates the ability of governments to provide fiscal support to vulnerable populations amidst soaring gas and food prices.
In the realm of finance, all eyes are on the sovereign debt markets as they process the implications of this new phase of global confrontation and the mounting $315 trillion global debt pool. The 10-year United States Treasury yield remains elevated near 4.4% this morning, as investors seek safety in the dollar while simultaneously hedging against the inflationary tail risks of the ongoing maritime blockade. This restrictive financial environment is creating a significant liquidity squeeze in the private credit sector, where many funds tied to global trade finance are facing a wave of redemption requests from institutional investors. On Wall Street, the focus has shifted toward the sustainability of wartime spending, as the IMF projects that public debt in conflict-affected nations could increase by as much as 14 percentage points within the next 3 years. Financial analysts warn that the current credit stress may transition into a broader banking sector contagion if interest rates remain at these restrictive levels for an extended period.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus remains on the high-stakes build-out of sovereign AI infrastructure as a means of ensuring national resilience in a fragmented world. Leading hyperscale cloud providers have announced a further acceleration of their capital expenditure plans, which are now projected to reach $650 billion for the 2026 fiscal year. This massive investment is primarily directed toward securing next-generation hardware and, more importantly, dedicated energy sources. To bypass the vulnerabilities of a volatile global power grid, tech conglomerates are entering into formal joint ventures with nuclear utility providers to secure small modular reactor capacity. This shift occurs as the demand for agentic AI systems reaches a new peak, with enterprises increasingly relying on autonomous agents to manage complex and disrupted logistical networks. However, the IMF suggests that actual productivity gains are currently arriving too slowly to offset the massive geopolitical and energy shocks rippling through the global system.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are now undergoing a permanent structural rewiring. With the naval blockade and the countermeasures in the Strait of Hormuz remaining in full effect, the maritime industry has officially declared the Persian Gulf a zero insurance zone for commercial vessels. This has cemented the Cape of Good Hope as the sole viable route for Asia to Europe trade, a detour that adds 14 days to transit times and maintains a high floor for freight rates. Logistics professionals report that 72% of trade volume originally intended for the Middle Eastern choke points has now been permanently rerouted or transitioned to multimodal air and rail corridors. This represents the most significant shift in global trade patterns in modern history,
as the industry accepts a new reality defined by regional inventory buffers and a total abandonment of the low-cost, just-in-time models that define the previous era of globalization.